The shuttle's control panel flashed another warning as Kalen Vance guided it toward the edge of the shimmering veil. The iridescent barrier rippled before him like a living curtain of light, its colors shifting unpredictably through spectrums both familiar and alien. Final approach to survey perimeter. Warning: proximity to anomalous energy field. Recommend immediate course correction, the shuttle's automated system announced in its monotone voice. Override, Kalen muttered, his eyes fixed on the undulating energies ahead. His weathered face, marked by years of harsh planetary environments and harsher memories, reflected the dancing lights of the veil. Logging objection to current course. The voice shifted to a more personalized tone, slightly sardonic, distinctly male. Also logging observation that this is approximately the 300th time I've had to object to your reckless behavior, with a success rate of precisely 0%. Kalen's mouth twitched into the ghost of a smile. That's why I keep you around, Chip. You're consistent. The drone hovering at his shoulder, a sleek, matte black sphere with a single azure scanner eye, bobbed slightly in what might have been the mechanical equivalent of a sigh. Cognitive heuristic interface partner, reporting that your contract explicitly states mapping the perimeter of the shimmering veil. Not entering it, not exploring it, certainly not dying horribly within it like the 27 previous expeditions. 27 expeditions that we know of, Kalen corrected, making minute adjustments to their approach vector. And none of them had you. Flattery will not alter the laws of physics, Kalen. The ex-military surveyor ignored the AI as he focused on the readouts. The anonymous contract had been too good to pass up, triple his usual rate for what appeared to be a simple perimeter mapping job of the phenomenon locals called the shimmering veil. The contract specifically indicated no penetration of the veil itself was required or advised, which was precisely why Kalen had accepted it. Not for the money, though that was welcome enough, but for what lay beyond. Perhaps answers. Perhaps oblivion. Either would be a change from the hollow existence he'd been living since Outpost 7. The veil had first appeared on Xylos 30 years ago, a mysterious energy field that defied conventional analysis. Those who ventured into it never returned, at least not in any recognizable form. There were stories of distorted messages from missing explorers, of time flowing differently near the boundary, of whispers that called to those who lingered too long at its edge. To most, the veil was a death sentence. To Kalen, it was a siren call. Commencing final approach. He announced to no one in particular. Chip's scanner eye flickered rapidly, calibrating all sensors for maximum data collection before we expire in a spectacular but entirely preventable fashion. Kalen's shuttle pierced the boundary without resistance, though every instrument on his panel immediately went haywire. Compass needles spun wildly, radiation meters fluctuated between 0 and critical levels, and his navigation system simply shut down completely. The transition was less dramatic than he'd expected. No violent turbulence, no immediate disintegration. Instead, the shuttle seemed to move through a space that felt wrong, like sliding through a reality with different physical laws, where distance and direction had become suggestions rather than absolutes. Sensory overload. Kalen gasped, gripping the controls tighter as his vision blurred and his inner ear rebelled. Colors stretched and warped around him. Sounds echoed with impossible delays, and his skin tingled as though electricity were dancing across it. Multiple system failures, Chip reported, his voice fluctuating in pitch and speed. Quantum readings inconsistent. Temporal markers desynchro. The AI's voice cut out for several seconds before resuming. Nized. Processing capacity reduced to 17%. Recommend. Retraction. Retreat. No going back now. Kalen managed through gritted teeth, fighting the nausea as he guided the rapidly failing shuttle toward what appeared to be a pocket of relative stability ahead. A space where the chaotic energies seemed less intense. As they penetrated deeper into the veil, the disorientation began to ease, or perhaps Kalen was simply adapting to it. The shuttle's systems stabilized somewhat, though the readings they provided were nonsensical. According to his instruments, they were simultaneously accelerating and decelerating, gaining and losing altitude, and experiencing both extreme heat and cold. Chip status. Kalen called out. The drone wobbled unsteadily in the air. Operational, but compromised. Sensory data is problematic. I am experiencing the electronic equivalent of an existential crisis. Just keep recording everything, Kalen instructed as he stared out the viewport at the impossible landscape that had materialized around them. They appeared to be flying over a forest, if one could call it that. Crystal-like trees stretched upward, their transparent branches chiming softly as they moved in non-existent wind. Rivers of what looked like liquid light flowed between them, cascading upward in defiance of gravity before disappearing into hovering pools. Geometric structures that couldn't possibly maintain structural integrity floated in the distance, their angles and dimensions shifting subtly whenever Kalen tried to focus on them. There, he murmured, spotting what appeared to be a clearing ahead. A perfect circle of stillness amid the chaotic beauty. We're setting down there. Fascinating, Chip remarked, scanner I fixed on the instruments. According to our readings, there doesn't technically exist. Kalen guided the shuttle toward the clearing, which seemed to grow both closer and more distant with each passing moment. The engines strained against the inconsistent physics of the veil until, with a final surge of power, the craft broke through into the strange oasis of calm. The moment they crossed into the clearing, all the ship's systems suddenly normalized. The engines quieted, the instruments settled into standard readings, and the disorienting sensory effects faded away. This is unexpected, Chip noted, hovering cautiously forward. A pocket of standard physics within the anomaly? Scanning the perimeter, Kalen activated the landing sequence, touching down on what appeared to be perfectly normal soil. The clarity of the area was almost jarring after the chaos outside, like stepping from a hurricane into the eye of the storm. External atmosphere reads as breathable, Chip reported, though I strongly advise against. Opening the hatch, Kalen finished, already unsealing his cockpit. The air that rushed in was cool and carried a faint scent like ozone after a lightning strike. Kalen took a tentative breath, then a deeper one. His head remained clear, his lungs didn't burn, and his skin didn't melt off his bones. All positive signs. He stepped out onto the surface of the clearing, Chip hovering protectively at his shoulder. The ground felt solid beneath his boots, though when he looked closely, he could see that what appeared to be dirt and short grass was actually composed of millions of tiny, interlocking geometric patterns that shifted microscopically with each step. We appear to be in a controlled environment, Chip observed. The question is, controlled by whom or what? By me, came a voice from the center of the clearing. Kalen spun around, his hand automatically reaching for the pulse pistol at his hip. 20 paces away stood a figure that hadn't been their seconds before. A woman, or at least a being in the shape of one. She was tall and slender, with features that seemed almost human but too perfect, too symmetrical. Her skin had a faint luminescence, with intricate patterns flowing beneath the surface like circuitry or tattooed constellations. But it was her eyes that truly marked her as alien, solid silver orbs without pupils or irises, yet somehow conveying both intelligence and ancient patience. You arrived later than the echoes predicted, she said, her voice melodic and accented in a way Kalen couldn't place. Each word seemed to linger in the air slightly longer than it should. Scan complete, Chip announced. Subject is... The drone paused, its scanner eye flickering rapidly. Unknown error. Recalibrating. The AI's hovering became erratic. Warning. Sensory reflection detected. Unable to process. With a sharp electronic whine, Chip's systems stuttered and the drone dropped a few inches in the air before stabilizing. Perhaps your mechanical companion should rest, the woman suggested, her head tilting slightly as she studied the drone. The transition is always difficult for synthetic minds. Kalen kept his hand on his weapon. Who are you? What is this place? My name, in your phonetics, will be closest to Lyra, she replied. And this, She gestured to the clearing and the chaos beyond, is the veil. Or as my people once called it, the Nexus Scar. Your people, the architects. She stepped forward, moving with a grace that seemed almost liquid. I am the witness, the guardian. I am what remains. Chip had recovered enough to hover back to Kalen's side. I advise extreme caution. I cannot obtain reliable readings on this entity. Either our sensors are still malfunctioning, or she does not conform to any known parameters of organic life. Lyra's mouth curved into a slight smile. Both observations are correct, little machine. Kalen studied her, years of military training and survival instincts screaming at him to retreat, to return to the shuttle. Yet something else, curiosity, or perhaps that same self-destructive impulse that had driven him into the veil, kept him rooted to the spot. You speak our language, he noted. The veil speaks all languages, she corrected. It translates intention as much as words. Part of its unstable nature. And what exactly is the veil? Some kind of spatial anomaly? A tear, in reality? A scar, Lyra repeated, her silver eyes reflecting the shifting lights beyond the clearing. A wound in the fabric of what you would call reality. And like all wounds, it remembers what caused it. She gestured for him to follow and began walking toward the edge of the clearing. After a moment's hesitation, Kalen fell into step beside her, Chip trailing cautiously behind. Approaching the perimeter of the stable zone, the AI warned. Sensory distortion increasing by 15% with each step. The veil responds to intent and expectation, Lyra explained as they neared the boundary where the ordered clearing gave way to chaos. Your expectations of disorientation and danger shape your experience of it. Your fear creates fear responses. Are you saying it's all in my head? Kalen asked skeptically. No, the veil is quite real, but it is responsive, malleable. It reflects and magnifies. As they reached the edge, Lyra extended her hand toward the shifting energies. The chaotic patterns immediately calmed in a small semicircle before her, creating a stable pathway leading outward. Your companion will need to remain here, she said, nodding toward Chip. The path I create can accommodate your physiology, but his systems will become increasingly unstable the deeper we go. He stays with me, Kalen insisted. I can maintain approximately 7 minutes of functionality before critical system failure in the current environment, Chip volunteered. Though I appreciate your sentimental attachment. Lyra considered this. Very well, but when his systems begin to fail, we must return him to this clearing. With that, she stepped out of the stable zone and onto her created path, Kalen following cautiously behind with Chip at his shoulder. The moment they left the clearing, the disorientation returned, though less intensely along Lyra's path. Around them, the impossible forest continued. Now that they were moving through it, Kalen could see that the crystal-like trees weren't static. They were constantly growing, branches extending and retracting, trunks widening and narrowing in smooth, undulating rhythms. When they passed particularly close to one, he could hear it, not just the chiming of its branches, but something like music or whispered conversation emanating from within. The trees are speaking, he asked. They echo, Lyra corrected. All things in the veil echo. Past, present, potential futures, all resonate together here. They passed a stream of the liquid light, which rippled at their approach as though acknowledging their presence. Lyra reached down and touched its surface, causing it to spiral upward around her hand in defiance of gravity before settling back into its flow. My people built this world, she said quietly. Not the veil itself, but what existed before. We were architects of reality, shapers of the fundamental forces. What happened? Kalen asked, though he was beginning to suspect the answer. Hubris, Lyra replied simply. We attempted to reshape the temporal framework of existence. To create perfect predictability, perfect order. The experiment failed catastrophically. Is that what caused this? He gestured to the chaotic beauty surrounding them. Lyra nodded. The veil is the aftermath, a fracture in the membrane between dimensional spaces, a place where causality itself has been damaged. They continued deeper, passing phenomena that defied description, areas where gravity reversed or swirled in spirals, patches where time itself seemed to flow at different rates. In one location, Kalen watched as droplets of water fell upward from a pool, each drop aging from water to ice to vapor and back again as it rose. "Warning," Chip announced suddenly. "Encountering temporal inconsistencies. Internal chronometer experiencing multiple simultaneous calibrations. Recommend immediate." The AI's voice fragmented into overlapping versions of itself before stabilizing. "Return to stable zone." "He's beginning to destabilize," Lyra observed. "The echoes are affecting his processing." Before Kalen could respond, the landscape around them shuddered. The path Lyra had created wavered, and the relatively stable space around them began to disintegrate into swirling patterns of light and energy. "Memory storm," Lyra said urgently. "Quick, this way." She grasped Kalen's arm, her touch warm but strange, like a mild electrical current flowing into his skin, and pulled him toward what appeared to be a cluster of the crystal trees. Chip followed, his hovering now erratic and jerky. They reached the trees just as the storm hit. A maelstrom of fragmented images, sounds, and sensations that tore through the space they just occupied. Kalen caught glimpses within it. Alien landscapes, unfamiliar beings, what might have been battles or celebrations or rituals, all bleeding into one another in a chaotic tapestry. "What is that?" he gasped, pressing his back against one of the trees, which hummed in response to his touch. "Memories," Lyra explained, her silver eyes reflecting the storm. "Echoes of everything that has occurred within the veil. Sometimes they coalesce into storms like this." Chip emitted a high-pitched electronic whine, his scanner eye flickering wildly. "System overload. Temporal data influx exceeding processing capacity. Emergency shutdown imminent." "Chip, initiate hibernation mode," Kalen ordered quickly. Hibernation protocol engaged. The AI responded, its voice slowing. "Wake me when reality makes sense again." The scanner eye dimmed to a dull blue glow as the drone settled into Kalen's outstretched hand. "He will be safe in that state," Lyra assured him. "But we should return him to the clearing once the storm passes." Kalen nodded, securing the dormant drone to his belt. "You said memories? Are they yours?" "Some," she admitted. "Many belong to others, explorers, researchers, those who have entered the veil over the millennia. The veil captures impressions, moments, emotions. Nothing is ever truly lost here, merely transformed." The memory storm slowly dissipated, leaving behind a subtly altered landscape. What had been crystal trees now appeared more like columns of flowing liquid silver, and the path they had been following had shifted direction entirely. "The veil is constantly changing," Lyra explained, noting his confusion. "Each storm, each interaction reshapes it." "How do you navigate, then? How do you find your way?" "I don't navigate the veil," she said with a small smile. "I am part of it, as it is part of me. We have been bound together for a very long time." They started walking again, following a new path that Lyra created with subtle gestures of her hands. As they moved, Kalen noticed something disturbing. Reflections of himself appearing briefly in the liquid-like surfaces they passed. Not his current self, but versions of him from his past. A younger Kalen in military uniform, Kalen during the disastrous mission at Outpost 7, Kalen at his lowest after his discharge. "The veil is reacting to you," Lyra noted, following his gaze. "It senses the fractures within you, the echoes of your past, the divisions in your perception of self." "Stay out of my head," Kalen snapped, his hand instinctively moving to his weapon again. Lyra seemed unfazed by his hostility. "I'm not in your mind, Kalen Vance. The veil simply recognizes patterns, resonances in consciousness. Your arrival was not accidental." "What do you mean?" he demanded. "Your anonymous contract," she said simply. "Did you never wonder who might pay so generously for a simple mapping expedition of the veil's perimeter?" Kalen stopped walking. "You? Not exactly." The veil itself called to you in its way. It recognized something in you, a particular combination of desperation and hope, of disillusionment and possibility. That's impossible, is it? Lyra gestured at the impossible landscape around them. The veil exists in a state of quantum indeterminacy. It reaches across time and space in ways your science has barely begun to comprehend. It seeks resonance, harmony amid its chaos. She continued walking, and after a moment, Kalen followed, his mind racing. Could it be true? Had some aspect of this strange, fractured reality somehow reached across space to find him specifically? The idea was both disturbing and oddly comforting. The thought that even in his isolated existence, something had been calling to him. As they continued deeper into the veil, the environment became increasingly surreal. They passed through areas where colors existed that Kalen had no names for, where sound became visible and light had texture. In one region, his thoughts seemed to manifest as faint, glowing symbols in the air around his head, dissolving seconds after forming. "We're approaching the nexus," Lyra announced as they crested what appeared to be a hill, though the ground had curved in ways that defied Euclidean geometry. Below them stretched what Kalen could only describe as a vast library constructed from light itself. Towering structures that resembled bookshelves stretched in all directions, filled not with physical volumes, but with swirling, luminescent patterns that shifted and reformed constantly. Between these structures moved streams of energy connecting different sections in complex, ever-changing networks. "What is this place?" he breathed, temporarily overwhelming his suspicion. "The archive," Lyra replied. "The heart of the veil. The repository of all it has witnessed, all it contains, all it might become." She led him down into the archive, where the pathways between the luminescent shelves seemed to rearrange themselves as they approached, creating routes that hadn't existed moments before. "The memories here are stronger, more coherent," Lyra explained as they walked. "The archive preserves and organizes what would otherwise be chaos." As they passed one of the shelves, Kalen noticed images forming within the swirling energies, scenes that looked like recordings of past events. In one, he glimpsed beings similar to Lyra working with massive, complex machines. In another, a blinding flash of light engulfed an entire cityscape. "Your people," he guessed, "and the accident that created the veil." Lyra nodded, a profound sadness evident in her expression. "The final moments of my civilization, our greatest achievement and our ultimate downfall." She reached out, her fingers brushing against the luminescent patterns. The images responded to her touch, expanding to surround them both. Suddenly, Kalen found himself standing in what appeared to be a vast chamber filled with technology beyond his comprehension. Beings like Lyra moved around him, their forms more solid-looking than hers, their movements urgent. At the center of the chamber stood an enormous machine, a complex arrangement of crystalline structures and energy conduits surrounding a pulsing core of brilliant light. "Our temporal resonance engine," Lyra's voice explained, though her form had become transparent in this vision. "Designed to stabilize the probabilistic nature of reality, to create perfect predictive models of all possible futures." The figures in the vision were shouting now, pointing to readings on displays that flashed with warning symbols. The light at the machine's core was pulsating erratically, expanding beyond its containment field. "Something went wrong," Kalen said. "Everything went wrong," Lyra corrected. "The engine didn't just fail, it fractured the underlying structure of reality in this region of space. It created a cascade effect across dimensional boundaries." The vision showed the light expanding explosively, engulfing the entire chamber and beyond. The last image was of one figure, who Kalen somehow knew was Lyra, stepping directly into the light as others fled. "You didn't escape," he realized as the vision faded, returning them to the archive. "I chose to remain," she said quietly. "Someone had to witness. Someone had to remember. Someone had to try to stabilize what remained." Her silver eyes met his. I have been here for over 10,000 years, by your measurement of time. Kalen tried to process this information. The scale of the disaster, the isolation she must have endured, the weight of such a burden. Why am I here? He asked finally. Really? Why did the veil call to me specifically? Instead of answering directly, Lyra guided him deeper into the archive, to what appeared to be its very center. A circular platform surrounded by swirling energies that moved with greater intensity and purpose than anywhere else in the veil. This is the core, she explained. The point where the fracture in reality is most severe, where the boundaries between what was and what might be are thinnest. She gestured for him to step onto the platform. After a moment's hesitation, Kalen did so. Immediately, the energies around the platform responded, coalescing into recognizable images, scenes from Kalen's own life. He saw himself as a young recruit, full of purpose and idealism. He saw the mission at Outpost 7 unfolding. The miscommunication, the civilian settlement mistaken for an insurgent base, the orbital strike he had called down before realizing the error. He saw the aftermath, the disciplinary hearing, his discharge, his gradual withdrawal from human connection. But then the images shifted, showing scenes that had never happened. Alternative versions of that fateful mission where different choices led to different outcomes. In one, he double-checked the intelligence and averted disaster. In another, he went down with the settlement, dying alongside those he had mistakenly condemned. In yet another, he became hardened by the experience, rising through the ranks as a ruthless, effective commander who never questioned orders again. The veil shows you not just what was, but what might have been, Lyra said softly. The paths not taken, the versions of yourself that exist in potential, if not in actuality. What? Kalen demanded, his voice rough with emotion as the images continued to swirl around him. Why show me this? To torture me with what can't be changed. Because the fractures within you resonate with the fractures in the veil, Lyra explained, stepping onto the platform beside him. Your unresolved past, your splintered sense of self, they mirror the veil's own nature. That is why it called to you. To do what? I can't fix this. He gestured at the impossible energies surrounding them. I can barely fix myself. Not to fix, Lyra corrected. To harmonize. The veil doesn't need an engineer. It needs a resonance point. A conscious mind that understands fracture but chooses coherence. That has experienced division but seeks unity. As she spoke, the platform beneath them began to glow more intensely, and the swirling energies of the core drew closer, becoming almost tangible. The core is destabilizing, Lyra said urgently. It has been for centuries. Each storm grows stronger, each shift in the veil's landscape more dramatic. Eventually, the fracture will grow beyond this region, beyond this world. And you think I can stop that? Kalen asked incredulously. One broken ex-soldier? I think you can help stabilize it, she insisted. Not through technology or force, but through conscious choice, through the focused intent of a mind that understands both chaos and the desire for order. The energy was gathering now, pulsing around them in rhythmic waves that seemed to synchronize with Kalen's heartbeat. What do I need to do? He asked, finding himself strangely willing to accept this impossible responsibility. You must face the core directly, Lyra explained. Open yourself to it completely, your past, your regrets, your hopes. Then make a choice, not just for yourself, but for this place. Choose harmony over discord, connection over isolation. Kalen took a deep breath, looking at the swirling energies that now completely surrounded the platform. And if I fail? Lyra's expression was both compassionate and grave. Then the instability continues to grow. The veil expands, and eventually what happened to my civilization could happen to others. With that sobering thought, Kalen nodded his understanding. He closed his eyes, trying to quiet the skepticism and fear that had been his companions for so long. He thought of Outpost 7, of the faces of those who had died because of his mistake, of the person he had been before, and the hollow shell he had become after. As he opened himself to these memories, the energy of the core responded, intensifying around him. He could feel it probing deeper, past the surface thoughts to the raw emotions beneath. The guilt, the self-hatred, the desperate longing for redemption. Then abruptly, the energy withdrew. When Kalen opened his eyes, he was no longer in the archive. He stood in the command center of a military outpost, pristine, orderly, familiar. A younger version of himself sat at the main console, reviewing intelligence reports. "Sir, we have the coordinates for the suspected insurgent base," said an officer beside him. "Orbital strike package is ready on your command." With a shock, Kalen realized what he was seeing. Outpost 7, moments before his fateful decision. But this wasn't a memory or a vision. It felt completely real. "This isn't possible," he whispered. "Anything is possible in the Veil," came Lyra's voice, though she was nowhere to be seen. "The Corps is offering you what you most desire, a chance to undo your greatest regret." The younger Kalen looked up from the console, finger hovering over the authorization command. No one else in the room seemed aware of Kalen's presence, as though he were a ghost in this reconstructed past. "All I have to do is stop him, stop myself, from making that call," Kalen realized aloud. "I could save all those people." "You could," Lyra's disembodied voice agreed. "In this reality, within the Veil, you could create that outcome." Kalen moved toward his younger self, hand outstretched to intervene. Then he hesitated. "But it wouldn't be real, would it?" he asked. "Just an illusion maintained by the Veil. The actual past, the actual people, they'd still be gone." "The nature of reality is more complex than you imagine," Lyra replied. "But yes, this would be a reality contained within the Veil, not your original timeline." Kalen stared at his younger self, at the fateful moment frozen in time. The temptation was overwhelming, to rewrite his greatest mistake, to live in a version of reality where he hadn't failed so catastrophically. Then a familiar voice broke through his thoughts. "Detecting severe logical inconsistencies in environmental parameters," announced Chip, his drone form materializing beside Kalen. "Probability of authentic historical reconstruction, 0%. Assessment, sophisticated illusion or simulation." "Chip." Kalen was startled by the AI's appearance. "How are you here?" "You were in hibernation mode. Emergency protocols activated in response to extreme temporal-spatial anomalies," the drone explained. "Also, your vital signs indicated severe psychological stress. My primary function is to preserve your well-being, despite your persistent efforts to the contrary." The AI scanner, I surveyed the illusory command center. Analysis indicates this construct is designed to trigger maximum emotional response based on your psychological profile. Manipulation attempt detected. Kalen looked back at his younger self, still frozen in that moment of decision. Chip was right. This was a test, perhaps the final test. The Veil was offering him escape from his guilt, from his past, but the cost of embracing illusion over reality. "No," he said finally, stepping back from his younger self. "This isn't the answer." The command center scene wavered around him, like a reflection in disturbed water. "I can't change what happened," Kalen continued, his voice growing stronger. "And hiding in a false version of the past won't heal anything. Not me, not the Veil, not reality itself." As he spoke, the illusion began to dissolve completely, fragments of the command center peeling away to reveal the core of the archive beneath. Lyra stood there, watching him with an expression of hope and approval. "I choose to accept what happened," Kalen declared, feeling something shift within himself as he spoke the words. "Not to forget or deny it, but to carry it forward, to let it shape me without breaking me. I choose coherence over fragmentation, connection over isolation." With each word, the energies of the core responded, their chaotic swirling gradually settling into more harmonious patterns. The violent surges calmed into rhythmic pulses that began to synchronize with Kalen's heartbeat and breathing. "I choose to face reality as it is," he continued, "not as I wish it could be. And I choose to be whole, not perfect but integrated, past and present, failure and potential." As he finished speaking, Kalen felt a wave of energy pass through him, neither painful nor pleasant, but intensely transformative. The core pulsed once, brilliantly, then settled into a steady, stable glow that spread outward through the archive and beyond. "You've done it," Lyra breathed, her silver eyes wide with wonder. "The core is stabilizing." Chip's scanner eye flickered rapidly, confirming significant reduction in spatial temporal instabilities. Coherence patterns emerging across all measured dimensions. In layman's terms, reality is becoming less broken. Relatively speaking, Kalen felt the change too, a sense of rightness, of balance being restored, not just in the veil but within himself. The burden he had carried for so long didn't vanish, but it shifted, becoming something he could bear without being crushed beneath it. "What's happening?" he asked as the energies continued to spread outward from the core. "The veil is finding a new equilibrium," Lyra explained, watching the transformation with evident joy. "Not healed completely, that may never be possible, but stabilized, harmonized. The fracture remains, but it's no longer growing, no longer threatening to spread beyond containment." They watched together as the chaotic environment of the veil gradually transformed. The violent shifts in reality calmed into more gentle, rhythmic changes. The harsh, discordant sounds mellowed into something almost musical. The blinding flashes of light softened to a gentler luminescence. "We should return to the clearing," Lyra suggested after a time. "Your companion will be able to reactivate safely now." The journey back was remarkably different. Where before they had fought against the veil's chaotic nature, now they moved with it, through landscapes that remained strange and wonderful, but lacked the threatening instability of before. When they reached the clearing, where Kalen's shuttle waited, he removed Chip from his belt and reactivated the AI. The drone scanner eye flickered to life, quickly assessing their surroundings. Substantial environmental changes detected. Instability reduced by approximately 78%. Query: did we succeed or die trying? Current evidence suggests the former, but historical precedent favors the latter. "We succeeded," Kalen confirmed with a small smile. "Or at least, we've made a good start." "The veil will continue to evolve," Lyra added, "but now it evolves toward greater coherence rather than dissolution." Chip hovered higher, scanning in all directions. Recalibrating mission parameters. Previous directive: perimeter mapping of anomalous energy field. Updated directive: assist primary user in navigation and coexistence within stabilized spacetime anomaly. Maintaining optimal sarcasm levels. Kalen laughed, a genuine laugh, perhaps his first in years. "I think we can safely say the original contract has been fulfilled, albeit not in the expected manner." He looked at his shuttle, then back at Lyra and the transformed veil beyond. The idea of returning to his previous life, the solitary surveys, the empty shuttle flights between remote outposts, the nights alone with nothing but memories for company, suddenly seemed hollow compared to what he had found here. "What happens now?" he asked Lyra. "Now we learn to live with the echoes," she replied, a genuine smile transforming her face. "The veil is stabilized, but remains a place apart from normal space-time. It needs anchors, conscious minds that understand its nature and can help guide its evolution." "And that's me? Us?" Kalen gestured between himself and Chip. "If you choose," Lyra said. "You came seeking something, Kalen Vance. Perhaps this is what you were meant to find. Not oblivion, but purpose." Kalen gazed out at the transformed landscape. The crystal forest beyond the clearing now pulsed with gentler rhythms. The rivers of light flowed in more predictable patterns, and the geometric structures in the distance seemed more stable, though still gloriously impossible by conventional physics. "I don't know the first thing about being an anchor for a fractured reality," he admitted. "Neither did I 10,000 years ago," Lyra reminded him. "But you've already begun. Your choice in the core, to embrace wholeness, to choose coherence, that was the first step. The rest we discover together." Chip hovered closer to Kalen's shoulder. Risk assessment. Remaining in an extra-dimensional anomaly with an alien entity of unknown capabilities. Probability of survival. indeterminate. Potential for discovery and exploration, unprecedented. The AI paused. Recommendation: proceed with caution, and perhaps a sense of wonder. Kalen's lips quirked into a smile. Since when did you develop a sense of wonder, Chip? I adapted to my environment, the drone replied, scanner eye pulsing. When logic fails, one must rely on alternative processing methodologies. Besides, your consistent disregard for survival probabilities suggests a preference for the extraordinary over the safe. I am programmed to accommodate user preferences. Lyra watched their exchange with curious interest. The bond between you is something I had not anticipated. It adds harmony to the equation. She extended her hand toward Kalen. Kulme, there is much to show you, much to explain. The veil contains wonders beyond imagining, and with its new stability, we can explore regions that were previously too chaotic for safe passage. Kalen hesitated only briefly before taking her hand. Her skin felt warmer now, more solid somehow, as though her own nature had stabilized along with the veil. What about my shuttle? He asked, glancing back at the craft. It will remain safe here, Lyra assured him. This clearing is one of the most stable points in the veil. But if you wish to return to the world beyond at any time, that option remains open to you. The realization that he wasn't trapped, that this was truly a choice, settled something within Kalen. This wasn't an escape or a surrender. It was a new beginning, one he was choosing with eyes open. Lead on, he said. As they walked toward the edge of the clearing, the boundary that had once marked a sharp transition between order and chaos now showed a more gradual shift. The path Lyra created with her presence extended farther and with greater stability than before. The veil recognizes you now, she explained as they passed into the transformed landscape beyond. It resonates with your consciousness, as it does with mine. You'll find movement easier, reality more responsive to your intent. Intriguing hypothesis, Chip commented, scanning the environment as they walked. Conscious intention affecting quantum probability fields. Entirely unscientific by conventional standards. Yet empirical evidence suggests. The drone made a sound remarkably like a mechanical sigh. I shall require expanded data storage capacity for this assignment. Their path led them through the crystal forest, which now chimed in harmonious tones as they passed. The trees still shifted and changed, but with patterns that seemed almost choreographed rather than random. Occasionally, echoes of past events would manifest among them. Transparent images of explorers who had ventured into the veil before, fragments of conversations, moments of discovery or fear. The memories remain, Lyra explained, but they no longer coalesce into storms. They become part of the landscape, integrated rather than chaotic. As they ventured deeper, Kalen began to notice something extraordinary. His own thoughts and emotions seemed to influence their surroundings. When he recalled his military training, the path beneath their feet briefly took on the appearance of a regulation walkway. When he thought of his childhood home, nearby crystal formations momentarily reflected architectural elements from that distant memory. You're learning quickly, Lyra observed with approval. The veil responds to conscious and subconscious patterns alike. With practice, you can learn to direct those influences to shape small aspects of this reality. Is that what you do? Kalen asked. Shape the veil. Not exactly. After so long, the distinction between myself and the veil has blurred. I influence it, yes, but it equally influences me. We have become symbiotic. They arrived at what appeared to be a vast amphitheater carved from living crystal, overlooking a valley where rivers of light converged into a shimmering lake. Kalen realized this must be a new formation, something that hadn't existed before the veil's stabilization. This will be our sanctuary, Lyra said, a place of observation and discussion. From here, we can monitor the veil's ongoing transformation and guide it when necessary. Platforms of solidified light rose from the ground as she spoke, forming seating and what appeared to be control stations or interfaces of some kind. They bore resemblance to the technology Kalen had glimpsed in the vision of Lyra's people, but simplified, adapted. These interfaces will allow you to communicate with the deeper structures of the veil, she explained, to sense disturbances, to redirect energies when imbalances occur. Chip darted forward to examine the nearest interface. Fascinating. The control architecture appears to be semi-organic in nature. Neural pathways rather than digital. The drone scanner, I focused on Lyra. Question: how do these interfaces accommodate a human neurological system? Our host brain is considerably more primitive than your species design. Chip, Kalen admonished. Merely stating biological facts, the AI replied unrepentantly. Lyra seemed amused. The interfaces adapt to the user. They will recognize Kalen's neural patterns and reconfigure accordingly. She turned to Kalen. They may feel strange at first, overwhelming perhaps, but with time, they will become as natural as using your hands. Kalen approached one of the interfaces cautiously. It looked like a pedestal of flowing crystal that pulsed with inner light. As he drew near, the surface rippled and reshaped itself, forming indentations that perfectly matched his hands. Place your palms upon it, Lyra instructed. Then open your mind to the sensations that follow. Taking a deep breath, Kalen placed his hands on the interface. Immediately, a rush of information flooded through him, not as words or images, but as pure sensation, awareness extending beyond his physical form to encompass vast regions of the veil. He could feel the rhythms of its energies, the flows and eddies of its reality fabric, the places where stability was strongest and where subtle imbalances remained. Extraordinary, he whispered, eyes wide as he processed the influx of information. I can feel everything. Not everything, Lyra corrected gently, but much more than before. This is how we will monitor the veil's health, how we will detect problems before they grow serious. Kalen withdrew his hands slowly, the expanded awareness receding but leaving behind a lingering sense of connection to his surroundings. And this is to be my purpose now, guardian of a fractured reality. Our purpose, Lyra emphasized. After 10 millennia alone, I find the prospect of shared responsibility comforting. Users' vital signs indicate elevated endorphin levels and increased neural activity, Chip observed, hovering close to Kalen. Apparently, becoming custodian of a space-time anomaly agrees with you. Who would have predicted this career change? Kalen laughed. Certainly not the military psychologist who recommended my discharge. He turned more serious, looking out over the transformed landscape of the Veil. Will others come? Other explorers or researchers? Inevitably, Lyra nodded. The Veil has always called to curious minds, to those seeking answers or escape. Before, such visitors rarely survive their encounters with the chaos. Now, with a new stability, we can guide them, Kalen finished the thought. Help them understand this place rather than being destroyed by it. Precisely. Though some may still need to be turned away, those whose intentions would create disharmony within the Veil. Kalen thought about this new responsibility, this unexpected turn in his life's journey. He had entered the Veil seeking either answers or oblivion, caring little which he found. Instead, he had discovered purpose, connection, and perhaps the beginning of redemption. I should send a final report, he said suddenly, to whoever posted that anonymous contract. Let them know the perimeter has been mapped. And so much more. Lyra's expression grew thoughtful. The contract? Yes, we should address that matter. She gestured toward the amphitheater's center, where the crystal surface rippled and formed an image, a familiar corporate logo. Helix Dynamics, Kalen read aloud, recognizing the intertwined double spiral that represented one of the largest research conglomerates in the sector. They were behind the contract? Why would they hide their identity? They have attempted to study the Veil for decades, Lyra explained. Always from a safe distance, always with unsatisfactory results. Your expedition was one of many they have funded over the years, one-way journeys for desperate or curious souls. They seek to understand the Veil's energy signature, to replicate it, perhaps even to weaponize it. And now we've stabilized it. Kalen realized, a chill running through him, made it potentially more accessible. Not necessarily, Lyra countered. The stabilization also grants us greater control over what and who enters the veil. We can choose to remain hidden or to reveal ourselves on our own terms. Chip's scanner pulsed rapidly. Strategic assessment. Corporate entities prioritize profit and control. Highly probable they would attempt exploitation if aware of current developments. Recommendation. Selective disclosure at most. Kalen nodded, his military training automatically evaluating tactical options. We send them enough data to satisfy the contract, but nothing about the core, nothing about the stabilization. Let them think I merely mapped the perimeter as requested. A prudent approach, Lyra agreed. In time, we may choose to establish contact with select outsiders, scientists or philosophers who might appreciate the veil for what it is, rather than what they can take from it. And in the meantime, Kalen asked. Lyra's silver eyes met his, a smile forming on her luminescent face. In the meantime, we learn. The veil contains knowledge gathered across millennia, scientific insights, philosophical truths, artistic expressions from countless visitors and many civilizations, including my own, all preserved in the echoes. She guided him toward the edge of the amphitheater, with a view extended across the transformed landscape of the veil. In the distance, new structures were taking shape. Crystalline spires reaching toward the swirling energies above, bridges of solid light spanning impossible distances, gardens where vegetation of utterly alien design bloomed in patterns that seemed to convey mathematical theorems. The veil is entering a new phase of evolution, Lyra explained. No longer simply a wound in reality, but a place of creation and possibility. Your influence has already begun to shape it in ways I could not have anticipated. Kalen watched in wonder as a distant section of the landscape reorganized itself into what appeared to be a replica of an earth forest. Not perfect, but recognizably inspired by his memories of training exercises in the old-growth preserves of his home planet. I did that, he asked, amazed. Your consciousness did, Lyra confirmed. Your memories, your aesthetic preferences, your sense of what feels right and balanced. The veil absorbs these patterns and incorporates them, creating synthesis between your human perspective and its own nature. Chip hovered at Kalen's shoulder, scanner eye tracking the changes. Recalibrating operational parameters. Previous function, survey drone and navigational assistant. Updated function, archival recorder of unprecedented dimensional phenomenon, and the AI paused in an almost human manner, and companion to the Nexus Guardian. That's you, by the way. It added to Kalen. I've taken the liberty of assigning you a title befitting your new responsibilities. Kalen smiled at the drone's initiative. Nexus Guardian has a certain ring to it. As night fell, or what passed for night in the veil, a gradual dimming of the ambient energies to create a more restful environment. They returned to the clearing where Kalen's shuttle waited. The craft seemed smaller now, more limited than when he had arrived, a reminder of the confined existence he had left behind. You should rest, Lyra suggested. The integration with the veil demands much of your energy, even if you don't feel the strain immediately. Kalen nodded, suddenly aware of an overwhelming fatigue settling into his bones. The day's events, the journey through the veil, the confrontation at the core, the merging of his consciousness with the strange energies of this place, had taken a toll that adrenaline and wonder had temporarily masked. The shuttle has sleeping quarters, he said, gesturing toward the craft. I'll stand watch, Chip volunteered, though danger has a rather different meaning in this environment than in our previous assignments. As Kalen prepared for rest, he found himself pausing at the shuttle's viewport, looking out at Lyra. She stood at the edge of the clearing, her form illuminated by the gentle pulses of energy that now flowed rhythmically through the veil. She seemed both more alien and more human than when they had first met, a being of ancient wisdom and profound loneliness, who had found an unexpected connection. Tomorrow, he promised himself quietly, we begin learning how to truly live with the echoes. And as sleep claimed him, Kalen Vance, ex-soldier, failed officer, accidental savior of a fractured reality, felt something he had nearly forgotten: hope. The shuttle's systems hummed softly around him. Chip maintained a vigilant hover nearby, and beyond the clearing, the transformed veil pulsed with new purpose. For the first time in years, Kalen slept without nightmares, his consciousness gently cradled by the very reality he had helped to stabilize. He had entered the forbidden zone, seeking escape or oblivion. He had found an alien woman waiting for him, and together, they had begun to heal the fractured spaces between worlds.